Members, before we proceed with today's business, I wish to announce that I have, in terms of Rules 334, designated Mr. A.H.M. Papo as Parliamentary Councillor to the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa with the effect from the 3rd of May 2023. Congratulations to you, Honorable Member. In absentia, I don't see the Honorable Member. Lastly, Honorable Members, order, Honorable Mcebisi. I know, lastly, the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Ms. D. van der Walt has been filled with effect from the 1st of May 2023 by the nomination of Mr. J.F. Smale. The member has made and subscribed the oath in the Speaker's office yesterday. I welcome you, honorable members. Don't take chances. It's not his first term here. It's his second one, by the way. Honorable Smale, raise your hand so that people can see where you are. He's not here. First day. No. Thank you. Honorable members. Honorable members, we congratulated you, Honorable Papo, in your absence. Congratulations. Thank you, Honorable. Order now. Shall we proceed, Honorable members? I think people feel there's freedom a bit. I don't know what's happening. There's a bit of space. It's airy. I don't know. I think so. Yeah. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary on. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Honorable members, the first question has been asked by the Honorable K.E. Magak. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. As I indicated in my reply to the State of the Nation address and debate on the 16th of February of this year, the Minister of Electricity, as I said, will be responsible for overseeing all aspects of the electricity crisis that we are going through. The Minister of Electricity is responsible for driving the various actions being coordinated by the National Energy Crisis Committee to end load shedding as a matter of urgency. As I said then, matters of energy policy remain the responsibility of the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. As for the issue of parliamentary oversight of energy policy matters, Parliament is required in terms of the Constitution and also its own rules to develop mechanisms to ensure that all executive organs of state in the national sphere of government are accountable to it and to maintain oversight of the exercise of the National Executive Authority. It is up to Parliament to decide how to exercise its oversight role with respect to matters within the jurisdiction of the Minister of Electricity. The Minister is overseeing the full and speedy implementation of the Energy Action Plan to ensure that the severity and the frequency of load shedding is reduced in the immediate term and brought to an end within the shortest possible time. Following his appointment, Minister Ramaphosa conducted a diagnostic assessment of Eskom's installed generation capacity, resulting in the identification of a set of critical interventions to maximize energy availability factor of the generation fleet. The ministry engaged a wide spectrum of stakeholders, including industry, various businesses, labor, original equipment manufacturers, and the diplomatic community, who have all pledged their support for strategic interventions to reduce the intensity and frequency of load shedding. The preoccupation of the Minister is to improve the performance of the existing Eskom baseload fleet, maximize performance and output of peaking stations, and to reduce demand through an aggressive demand-side management program. This work is being undertaken alongside measures that are being put in place to sustainably and urgently increase the construction of new generation capacity, which is currently underway. The reforms that we have already implemented have resulted in a significant increase in investment in new generation projects, with many more in the pipeline and a number of others that are soon going to be put on acquisition and in the end will also be implemented. A great deal of work is being done in this regard, much as we are going through a challenging period with continued load shedding. I do believe that the end should be in sight soon, as all these efforts bear fruit, and fruit they will bear because we now have a very focused type of attention on precisely what needs to be done, cutting across what the management at Eskom is doing, the board is doing, the minister is doing, and all the other relevant cooperating ministers, mineral and energy, as well as public enterprises. So all hands are on deck in as far as dealing with our electricity challenge is concerned. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable K.E. Magaka.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Honourable President, for that comprehensive response. My follow-up question, while the Minister of Electricity was appointed with the view that he would expedite the government's response to load shedding and energy insecurity under the National State of Disaster on Electricity, which the government ultimately revoked following the legal action against its rationality, is the Minister of Electricity still empowered to fast-track the government's energy action plan in the absence of National State of Disaster on Electricity? And what is the Minister of Electricity's new approach to solve electricity crisis following the government's withdrawal of the National State of Disaster, given that load shedding is likely to reach stage 7 and 8 in this winter season? Thank you, President.
The President. Thank you, Honorable Makaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Minister of Electricity has his work cut out, and the finalization, which is due to be announced very shortly, of actually all the mandate matters that he has to attend to, set out precisely what he's meant to do. The issue of the state of disaster was going to be an added tool to enhance the implementation of the address that needs to be given with regard to ending load shedding. And when that was withdrawn, it did not mean that the minister does not have the tools and the capability to be able to do his work. What we have been in the process of doing is to look at the tasks that relate to generation in the Electricity Regulation Act, and those tasks that need to be executed by the Minister of Electricity, and they vary, or they include matters of generation. They also include the identification of the type of energy source that we need, and thereafter cooperating with the Minister of Minerals and Energy for the procurement process, which once it has been procured, the Minister of Electricity will then ensure that it is implemented and deal with matters such as the financial close, and also ensure that once there is financial close and it is implemented, the grid or transmission is ready. And in this regard, we'll also be working very closely with other institutions such as NERSA. And indeed, in all this, he'll also be cooperating very closely with the Minister of Public Enterprises. So if there ever was to be intergovernmental cooperation where we get rid of all the silos, this whole task of dealing with electricity in our country is going to be a great example, because that is precisely what has started to happen now. The cooperation between the Minister of Electricity, the Minister of Mineral Energy, Resources and Energy rather, and the Minister of Public Enterprises is precisely what we want to see in government, where all the silos are broken down and the ministers work in a very cooperative spirit, and that is exactly what is underway now. So the Disaster Management Act process was going to be an aid, an enabler, but that having been foregone, other various instruments of a legislative nature are in place to enhance the work of the Minister of Electricity. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W.J. Boshoff.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much, and Honorable President. If I read the question correctly, it actually consisted out of two elements. How will you, the Honorable President, convince the public that the location of the Minister of Electricity in your own presidency is not an attempt to shift oversight on energy policy away from Parliament? And then something about time frames. Now, you said that Parliament should actually devise its own mechanisms for oversight, but just last week your own governing party voted down an attempt to provide exactly such a mechanism. So I would like to know what is the actual plan that would be acceptable then. And in addition to that, I would like to know, you appointed the Minister of Electricity, and clearly you must have had a good idea about what he should do. And yet, even today, you told this House...
Exceeded your time for your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you did raise your question. But
Actually, I would just like the President to answer the original questions. How are we going to, what measures will be acceptable to him and the governing party?
Thank you. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I did say in my original response that really it is up to Parliament on how they would like, Parliament would like the accounting process to happen in relation to the Minister of Electricity. We have said very clearly that the executive is accountable to Parliament, and it therefore behoves on this Parliament to work out those mechanisms that would also include accountability of the Minister of Electricity. Locating the ministry in the Presidency does not by any means diminish the issue of accountability. Minister Ramaphosa is by no means the only minister whose work is lodged in the Presidency. We've got 3 ministers who are accountable to Parliament, whose work is lodged in the Presidency. And so therefore, putting the ministry in the Presidency, and particularly the minister to be driving the process of the Energy Action Plan from the Presidency through the Crisis Committee that was created, is meant to enhance precisely what work needs to be done. With regards to the mechanism broadly, as I said and I repeat, that needs to be discussed by Parliament, including the matter of the accountability of the Presidency. It is my information that this matter is under discussion now in Parliament, and I encourage that that discussion should ensue and Parliament should make its own decisions in this regard. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honourable President. The 3rd supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable N. Singh.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable President, saying that the Minister of Electricity has his work cut out for him is an understatement. Really, all 3 ministers have the work cut out for them, and I hope that work doesn't include them having serious differences in the cabinet room and not dealing with the matter at hand. I see they are shaking hands. But having said that, Honourable President, recently the North Gauteng High Court, in a full bench, held that all hospitals, clinics, schools and police stations should be exempt from load shedding. And this is something you've said in the State of the Nation address. The Minister of Electricity said that. So I cannot understand how, Honourable President, that this decision of a full bench is being appealed by this government, given the fact that water is required by everybody in our land. And when electricity is not available, water pump stations don't work. And given that we need police stations, we need hospitals to sustain life, and we need to also sustain our economy. I see Honourable Premier Windy also said it'll be too costly. Now, can we put a cost to these vital things that the society requires, Honourable President? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Singh. The President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Yes, the court did take that decision. And clearly, the view that we've taken in government is we do need to deal with the practicality of that decision. Because the whole process of load shedding is really to manage the grid. Because when a number of units are not available to generate energy, you could be tempted to drive those remaining units, and you could drive them to a point of breakdown. And you therefore need to manage it, and so the engineers tell me that you need to limit them overheating. I use a colloquial term, and if they were to overheat because you're driving them all at one go to generate the electricity at its maximum, then the grid could collapse. So you therefore need to feed the electricity in a number of areas on possibly a sequential basis, and switch off other areas and switch other areas on until you reach a stage where all units are then able to give you the electricity we need. And this is possibly what maybe we don't all understand, because load shedding is the last resort. If we ever wanted that there should be no load shedding, the grid would collapse, because a number of units, for reasons that we have dealt with, are not at the time available. And as we speak now, the availability factor of our electricity has gone down below 50%. So much as we want that electricity must be generated for all and sundry, all at one go, it is just practically, engineering-wise, not possible. And it is for this reason that government wants to shed light through this whole process on the impracticality of doing all that. And yet, the more practical way is to do your load shedding in sequence, where you are able to shed load for a number of areas. Ideally, I would personally want all those hospitals, schools to be exempt. But from an engineering point of view, I am told that it is practically impossible to do. So now we are faced with a court judgment and the impracticality of it all. So the process of then approaching the court through an appeal process is to bring to bear a better understanding, so that there can be understanding of the engineering aspects and the impracticality aspects of it all. And by the way, it is not being done in an arrogant way, in a way where we're trying to say second-guess the court. It is actually being done to ensure that we save the grid, because otherwise it would collapse if we were to implement that judgment in full. I hope that makes it clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, let me add, Honorable Speaker, you alluded in the first part of your question that they've got their work cut out, and you are absolutely right. The ministers have their work cut out, each one of them. And as I said during State of the Nation, as well as I said during the reply to the debate, these three areas of work are all very critical to our electricity architecture. And I outlined precisely what each is doing. And now, as all of them face up to the challenges that lie ahead, they are finding that, in fact, they have to cooperate even more. And that is why there are no fights in cabinet, there is no turf war, which is being, bandied around in the media. They are cooperating well, and they know at what point they need to talk to each other to move things forward. So I'm very happy with the architecture that we've put in place. It is working, and it will continue to work. Believe you me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W.M. Thring.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the power crisis is devastating households and businesses, eroding the nation's economic growth prospects, disrupting power supply chains, and stoking inflation. Public anger is understandably growing around the government's inability to deal with the crisis. The Electricity Minister, Ramaphosa, has warned that South Africans could face a cold winter that may include stage 8 power cuts. This is unprecedented, with stage 6 load shedding having 8 hours or so of cuts, stage 8 up to 12 hours, and stage 9 and 10 too ghastly to contemplate. Now, Mr. President, the North Gauteng High Court found that it is clear that whatever, and I quote, it is clear that whatever the President and his cabinet ministers averred, the consequences of policy decisions resulted in the current need by Eskom to continue to implement various stages of load shedding. In other words, Mr. President, you and your cabinet failed to keep the lights on. Now, taking the public into your confidence, would the President agree that government's attempts to solve the energy crisis have failed spectacularly? And what responsibility and further initiatives, if any, do you as the head of state and cabinet take for the energy and resultant economic quagmire our country faces? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Thring. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I deny completely that we have completely failed in our attempts to deal with this crisis. We continue to take a number of measures and actions on a continuous basis. When I stood here and announced the Energy Action Plan, it was welcomed by all and sundry as being a very rational plan that would address our energy crisis. We hadn't then foreseen that our energy availability factor would decline further than where it was at the time. We hadn't then foreseen that 3 units of Kusile would just collapse. We hadn't foreseen that a number of others in other power stations, Creel and all that, would also collapse. That is something from an engineering point of view had not been foreseen. But the measures that we've been putting in place, as I said in our Energy Action Plan, was to embark on new generation. New generation is underway right now of a variety of sources. One of the things I also said in 2019, standing here in this Parliament, actually it was in the State of the Nation, I said we needed emergency power. And we needed emergency power of some 3,000 megawatt, I said. And that process got underway. It has been stopped by interventions that are completely out of government's hands. Stopped by either various non-governmental organizations who've taken the process to court, environmental issues have been raised, and that is what has put the brakes on what I would call immediate emergency power that could have been brought to bear. And I still say today, what South Africa needs right now is emergency energy that we can bring in. Other countries have done so, and I've been to a few countries on our continent. They have done so. They brought in ships that are able to generate energy and immediately solve their energy challenges and problems. And I do believe that that is the way to go right now, to add those megawatts that we don't have, while we wait for the construction of the other renewable energy sources, as well as the revamping or the repair of our baseload coal-fired power stations that are being worked on after years of no maintenance. And part of our plan is also to work on demand management. Part of our plan is to also work on rooftop solar installations. Now, those are interventions that are going to help to reduce the pressure on the grid and add more energy sources to our electricity overall landscape. So those initiatives, which have been validated by many, are underway. We're repairing our power stations, we're maintaining them, And when you maintain the power stations, you have to take it out of the grid. And sometimes it goes on for much longer than you wanted. So we're dealing with big machinery here, and we're dealing with suppliers that are big original equipment manufacturers that manufacture for the whole world, and they don't wait in line just for South Africa. So when we have a generator that is broken down, we wait in line. But the initiatives we are taking is that we will add other sources of energy, which we are doing. And soon there will be a further round of procurement that is going to add more megawatts. So all that is ongoing, and we aim, as this reaches fruition, to bring load shedding under control and to an end. And that is precisely what all these three ministers are doing. Ministers of Public Enterprises is dealing with the restructuring of Eskom, so that we have a transmission company, so that that transmission company is then able to put in investments in the transmission lines so that they can absorb new energy generation. Minister of Electricity focuses on generation, and Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources focuses on the policy, the procurement process, and all that. So that is the architecture that we've put in place. And we are not sleeping on the job, and we are hoping that all these efforts will lead to the solution that the people of South Africa want to see. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President. Honorable members, before I proceed to the next question, may I just make a plea that those who are raising supplementary questions, please avoid making long statements before you ask your question. I think I've been why? Because I've been very lenient and allowed you to go way beyond the time allocated for that. If we could avoid it, please, it will be better for all of us. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Thank you. Question number 8 has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, I have not been presented with any evidence of members of the Cabinet or other senior government officials alleged to be involved in corruption at Eskom. Anyone who does have such evidence should provide that information to the relevant authorities so that a thorough investigation of all credible allegations can be conducted. There are institutions whose job it is to investigate these matters, as they have the legal mandate, they have the personnel, and they also have the capacity to be able to investigate all these matters. Significant progress has been made by law enforcement agencies. Eskom and other relevant government departments have also made progress in addressing crime and corruption at the entity. Various measures have been taken by the Department of Public Enterprises and reported to Parliament regarding the implementation of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. Coal supply agreements and construction contracts with a value of approximately 11 billion rand have been cancelled by Eskom. Eskom also initiated litigation that resulted in coal supply agreements to an approximate value of 3.7 billion being declared invalid. Further losses of approximately 10 billion rand to Eskom were prevented by setting aside other coal supply agreements and constructors' contracts. Eskom is pursuing claims with a value of approximately 4.8 billion against suppliers and former directors of Eskom the utility has recovered approximately 2 billion rand unlawfully paid by Eskom to service providers. The Special Investigating Unit has referred some 5,464 matters to Eskom for disciplinary proceedings against employees for their alleged failure to submit financial declarations, declare or get approval for doing work outside of Eskom. There are pending criminal cases or referrals to the National Prosecuting Authority by law enforcement in at least 125 instances, and a further 65 referrals to the Asset Forfeiture Unit relating to Eskom. At least 25 former senior executives at Eskom have been included in a database of individuals dismissed for their involvement in state capture and corruption at Eskom. All this demonstrates that government is proactively investigating and taking action against crime and corruption at Eskom. The law enforcement agencies themselves will, in addition, continue to investigate any credible information that is provided to it, because that is their job, and that is their specialty, and they have the capacity to do so. And as I've often said here, let us allow those institutions to do their work and to do it without any fear, favor, or prejudice. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with respect, I think you're confusing criminal liability with political liability. We know, you know, and the rest of the country knows that it is ANC cadres who are responsible for the corruption at Eskom. In your first State of the Nation address, Mr. President, you said, and I quote, "We will intervene decisively to stabilize SOEs. The recent action we've taken at Eskom to strengthen governance, root out corruption, and restore its financial position is just the beginning," end quote. On the 4th of June last year, the then CEO informed the police and state security officials that members of your cabinet are involved in the corrupt cartels at Eskom. And these are serious allegations. On the 5th of July, he informed Minister Godon and your NSA, Minister Mafia, about these ministers who are involved in corruption. Yet it now appears that you have done absolutely nothing in your cabinet to hold these individuals accountable. We cannot sit here while R1 billion a month is being looted from Eskom, and you're trying to go after the small fish when the big fish are sitting around your cabinet table. Mr. President, why have you not made any efforts to identify who those cabinet ministers are and hold them accountable?
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Steenhuisen's last word is quite instructive, because he says I should identify. The identification of anyone with regard to, say, criminal activity and corruption has to be done through an investigative process. Someone, an institution, has to investigate that. And I could easily say, Mr. Steenhuisen, you stole my other beautiful tie yesterday. But someone has to be able to say, somebody has to be able to say, let us investigate whether indeed Mr. Steenhuisen stole the president's beautiful tie. Because if I go on just a whim and a story that, yes, you stole my tie, without the evidence, without corroboration, without the investigation, then I'm flying on very thin ice. Because in the end, it's a beautiful tie. in the end, the process of investigation involves those agencies that are well adept, that are well capacitated, whose job is to investigate. And we as politicians can deal with whatever rumor. And it's very easy to make a rumor that so-and-so, or an allegation that so-and-so is involved in this and that. But where's the evidence to back that up? And that is why in my initial reply I said, those with evidence, those with information, those with full knowledge must go to the investigation institutions. They must go and report there. And that, no, I'm very interested, just as interested as I would be if I hear that you have stolen my tie. I would say, yes, let that be investigated. And that's precisely what I'm also saying here and now, that if there is any information that anyone in the executive has been involved in corrupt activities or theft, let the matter be investigated. And that is why I say without institutions who operate without favor, without prejudice, should be the ones that we put our trust in to be able to investigate such activities, rather than to deal with innuendo, rather than to deal with rumor, rather than to deal with allegations. I cannot possibly be able to lead on the basis of whims and innuendo and just stories that are bandied around. I need to deal with real evidence. And I've said over and over again, and the members on the opposition have always said, President, do this, charge this one. I arrest somebody, take them to court. I don't do that. And even if I wanted to do that, even if I wanted to do that and had those dictatorial ambitions, the rule of law that we have and the constitution that we have in this country would never allow me to do that. So in the end, it has to be done through due process of the law. It has to be done through the institutions that we have put in place. Because if the president then starts investigating his own ministers, then it basically means that we don't need the police. The president is the policeman himself. Then it means that we don't need criminal investigations, because the president is the criminal investigator himself. And we cannot run a banana republic in South Africa over things like that. We cannot. That we will never do. So, and I repeat, anybody who has information, who has evidence about anyone, be it a cabinet minister, be it whoever, should come forward and put the information before the law enforcement agencies, and they must then investigate, because they are the ones who investigate these matters. So, Honorable Speaker, I must say with respect, I'm not able to help Honorable Steenhuisen in this regard. The identification of people who might be involved must be done by the police and not by someone who does not have the capability or the expertise to do so. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J.C.N. Mkhwanazi. What's happening there, Honorable Member? Take your seat. Then exit. Honorable Mkhwanazi.
How are you? When are we playing?
Honorable Mkhwanazi, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, His Excellency the President, for the detailed, educating response. Mr. President, Considering that and reiterate allegations that senior politicians linked to the African National Congress are involved in plundering and perpetuating of corruption in Eskom remains dubious and untested, as the rate has failed to reveal those senior politicians has required to do so by SCOPA. Mr. President, Mr. President,
Order, honorable member.
Mr. President, has the government ever considered strengthening capacity of law enforcement agencies to assist Eskom in unearthing corruption and reduce the utilities dependence on private funded investigators headed by people with close ties to apartheid regime, and this is a threat to our democracy. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhwanazi. The President.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, thank you. Yes, Honorable Mkhwanazi, yes, the corruption and the malfeasance that has been going on in Eskom has always been a matter of concern to us. And a great deal of work has been underway, as I alluded to in my original response, with a number of people being identified, a number of them being arrested, being charged, either being disciplined or dismissed, and with monies being claimed. We are committed as government to assist Eskom as much as we possibly can, and to this end, we've set up teams that are currently busy investigating all acts of malfeasance. And there has been a great deal of progress in that regard. And on top of that, we've also bolstered our efforts to protect the nation's assets with regard to Eskom by deploying soldiers who are protecting our infrastructure installation at various Eskom power stations. So our focus is to reveal and unearth all these acts of malfeasance. And that is a process that is ongoing. There are teams that are led by top investigators that are doing this work as we speak now. And we continue to want to add more so that we strengthen their capability, so that we leave no room whatsoever for those who have been involved in acts of malfeasance, whether they are inside Eskom or even outside, whether they are suppliers or providing any service to Eskom. So that is precisely what we have been involved in. Hence, the success rate that has been made to have more than 5,000 cases that are being investigated and with their participants being involved means that work is being done on an ongoing basis. And I think that is what we should be pleased about. Now, this is a complete departure from what happened in the past. In the past, we either never heard about acts of corruption inside of Eskom, and wrong things were happening. Now we hear about them, but we don't only hear about them, something is being done about them because of all these acts that are taking place of getting people arrested and getting assets reclaimed and monies being paid back. So progress is being made, and I have a firm belief that we will continue to make progress in this regard. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the President. Sorry, the third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, Mr. De Ruyter has made a whole lot of allegations, but to date, despite numerous requests almost from the entire world, no evidence has unfolded thus far, including where he advised us that he informed Minister Godhan, and I know you to some extent did respond earlier. Did Mr. De Ruyter ever draw your attention, Mr. President, to any acts of corruption in Eskom, and or did Minister Godhan draw your attention to the statement that the narrator makes that he informed Mr. Godan that there's high levels of corruption and senior politicians are involved. I'm asking that so that the public can get a clearer picture whether there's any truth in what we are hearing or not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We have always spoken very publicly and broadly about acts of corruption that have been ongoing in Eskom. Apart from what has been in the public domain, what was unearthed through the State Capture Commission just added to the stories and the narrative. So that whole process of the aura of, if one can call it aura, or the narrative of corruption has been known from coal contracts to a whole range, but never was information ever put about the personalities that are involved. And hence I say, the process of identification of all that is a matter that should be fully put before the law enforcement agencies. It should be properly investigated so that those who are involved should then be identified and dealt with. The Zondo Commission dealt and identified a number of names, but also felt that further investigation needs to take place. And in this case, where there is identities of people, we say, bring them forward, let those be investigated, and let's have a measure of finality over this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable NLS Kwangwa.
President, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You're reminding me of your former colleague, your predecessor rather, who used to come here and say, evaluate his PDP, can't be. Former
Sorry,
President
I didn't
Zuma
hear
used
that.
to say that. Former President Zuma used to say, evaluate his PDP, can't be. You said you also can't evaluate his PDP. President, the fact of the matter, going back to the North Gauteng High Court judgment, we took you to court, by the way, and we won again. And I think what is important, President, is that it is especially the part where the judgment found that there had been repeated breaches by the state of its constitutional and statutory duties, and these breaches infringed the citizens' rights to health care, security, and education. The fact of the matter, President, whether it says with regards to the allegations made by the rate of R1 billion, or in the past where there was an overpayment of suppliers at Eskom to the tune of R4 billion, or whether it's the coal contracts, whether it's the evergreen contracts, corruption is endemic at Eskom. The question we want to ask is, should we then not get a firm commitment from government to say that some of the monies recovered in the fight against corruption at Eskom, including the revenue overruns that we get almost on an annual basis for the past 2 years, should be used or will be used to ensure that hospitals, police stations, and schools are provided with alternative sources of energy, so that you don't have hospitals like Corridor Hospital in the Eastern Cape, where they can sit with a malfunctioning generator for 2 months and some do not even have a generator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I did not speak about his pity-pity. Revenue that is raised by the government, as well as monies that are claimed and returned to government, are obviously managed by Treasury. And Treasury, in managing the funds of the nation, has to take into consideration a whole range of matters. And primary in their consideration is the welfare of the people of South Africa. How best that money can be utilized and deployed. And they, in doing so, will look at various balancing acts that they need to embark upon. The issue of, say, alternative power sources for hospitals, for schools, and a whole range of other places, including places where food is manufactured, are matters that have to be decided on a case-by-case basis. It has to be what you need to take into account, how much power does a hospital need, and what type of, say, alternative source of energy does it need. And that is why we say it cannot be a one-size-fits-all, just a whole scale right across the board. Because if you were to do so, then you would be inadvertently causing enormous problems for the entire grid of the country by trying to solve one particular problem. So one needs to always think about the consequences of each action that we take. And so therefore, in the end, in managing the, say, if you like, for lack of a better word, the allocation of the energy that should be managed by an Eskom through their energy management center, they look at all that, how much energy should be allocated to this region. And when they do so, they also look at special areas like hospitals and a number of areas like that. So the matter of how the fiscus would be able to distribute that, the overruns, as well as distributing monies claimed, I would not be able to respond to that because it is a money management matter that has to be managed by the Treasury themselves. And as I said, they take a whole number of consideration into account. But maybe a good thought that should be thought about, but you will find that all that has a number of other needs. If there ever is, an overrun of revenue, they will tell you that we already have an allocated area where the money should be deployed. But thank you very much for raising that.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. Question number 9 has been asked by the Honorable K.R.J. Mishwe. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, the pledges made by the International Partners Group, comprising of the United States of America, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and the European Union to support South Africa's just energy transition with around $8.5 billion in financing is on track. In 2022, South Africa formulated the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which sets out the scale of investment needed to meet the country's international carbon emissions reduction commitments. The pledges made by the International Partners Group towards this investment are contained in this investment plan that was presented here and published. These pledges consist of a combination of concessional, grants, as well as commercial loans, and guarantees as well. Work is underway to have these funds properly deployed. Financing under the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan will not be used for investment in coal-fired power stations. International climate financing is for investments that transition economies away from the use of fossil fuels. The bulk of the financing is for the energy sector, including the decommissioning of those power stations that have reached the end of their life. It is also for repurposing and repowering of identified coal power stations in line with South Africa's decommissioning schedule. It also includes support for new generation capacity, investments in the transmission grid, and strengthening the distribution network. Importantly, funds have been allocated to just transition interventions that will support vulnerable workers, reskill, train, and provide new diversified economic opportunities and jobs for workers and communities affected by the transition. Now, a number of role players are in the course of dotting the I's, crossing the T's in relation to all this. And a number of interventions are now underway to ensure that this plan is actualized. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable K.R.J. Mishwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, a number of European countries are buying coal from South Africa, while we lack coal that is clean and that can be used to power our generators. And there are some that have postponed their scheduled closures of their coal power plants. This, while South Africa is steaming ahead with decommissioning our coal power plants to appease leaders that are disregarding the devastating effects of load shedding on local businesses and costing our economy thousands of jobs that also leads to poverty. My question to you, Mr. President, is whether you know any European country that has been coerced or instructed to transition much quicker, and for me, the word much quicker is telling, much quicker from relying on coal plants, or did South Africa volunteer to take that risk that we believe will have devastating effects on our economy? We know that China, that is by far the largest coal-consuming country, accounts for 53% of global demand. And India is the second coal-consuming country. Are they also being told to transition much quicker, as South Africa has been told to transition much quicker? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Datemishwe. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Mishwe, we were not told. No, we were not told. What the process we've been involved in.
Now you can talk, because now I can listen.
We have been involved in an inclusive process, and it did not start a year or 2 years ago. We are a participant in various international initiatives, starting from the United Nations, culminating in the various Conference of Parties, COPs, started with COP 20, 21, 26, and all that. Of our own volition, we then said as a nation, climate change is a reality, and we see its devastating impact. We, like other nations, have to make our own decision and contribution to ensuring that we lower climate change. And we came out with our own national determination. Even before I set up the Presidential Climate Commission, processes were underway, led by a variety of South Africans as well, non-governmental organizations, and even this whole parliament was also in the various committees involved in discussions. But let me tell you another concern. We are the biggest emitter on the continent. We are obviously the biggest and the most industrialized nation, but we are the biggest emitter. And more than 80% of our energy emanates from fossil fuels. So as we emit all these fumes,
Honorable Volmarans, will you mute your system? Proceed, Honorable President.
thank you very much. Honorable Mishwe, 2-3 weeks ago, I had the occasion to listen to experts at the Presidential Climate Change Commission. And a professor in health and various respiratory diseases told us the impact of emissions is having on the health of a number of...
Honorable member, please take him off. Will you please remove Honorable Volmarans from the system? Order. Man, order. Honorable the President, proceed.
I thought for a minute, Honorable Speaker, that you wanted me to dance. So this professor was telling us about the impact of the emissions and the way they are affecting the health of South Africans. And that in many ways brought home the message about climate change and our contribution. And it's a matter that we may think that we should not care about, but when you begin to think about the many South Africans who are either dying and suffering from various diseases of a respiratory nature, and they then ascribe it to the emissions, we have to sit up and take notice. But apart from that, we have never been compelled to take the decisions that we have taken. We took these decisions on our own volition. But having done so, we have also said we are going to proceed to cleaner energy, and we will do it at our own that we will do it at our own pace and at our own time. What we've also said now recently, and this has been starkly put forward to us by Minister Ramaphosa, who in his very good diagnostic work, having gone to all our power stations, came up with a very clear message that the process of installing the renewables that we are working on is going to take quite a longish time. And in the course of doing so, we should also look at the timetable of the decommissioning process. And Honorable Mr. Decommissioning is something that we cannot run away from, because power stations have a life cycle. There is no power station that will go on for 50 years and 100 years. Even the one that you think can go on beyond 50 years, you have to keep on repairing it, and the cost of repairing that power station may in the end be much bigger than the cost of getting renewables. And as it ages, its capability and ability to generate power starts decreasing. And we are saying the timetable and the schedule for doing so has to be relooked. And Minister Ramaphosa has come up with a very convincing story, which is now leading us to saying, let us relook at the whole process of decommission without abandoning our commitment to move to cleaner energy. So we have to do both in tandem, and nobody is forcing us to speed up the process, because when these power stations age, Honorable Meshwe, they age, and they become, it's like an old car. An old car becomes a guzzler like old people, becomes a guzzler, and it becomes more and more difficult for you to operate it. So nobody is compelling us to speed up that process, and we are saying we are taking our own conditions and circumstances into account. And even those partners, we are making it very clear to them that in the end, the jet plan has to take into account our own situation. And we've got to secure our energy security throughout that whole process. So we will do what we as South Africans have to do. What they do in Europe, Honorable Mishra, is their business. We look at ourselves. Because we are a sovereign nation, we must look at our own interests, not at the interests of Europe and other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Gancho.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, it is evident that our government is committed to just energy transition and ensuring that no one is left behind. And this can be seen in the work being done by the Presidential Climate Change Commission. Given the high cost of transitioning from coal to clean energy sources and the need to ensure that our country meets our goals of net zero emissions by 2030 in terms of our nationally determined contribution, Mr. President, what are the challenges that government faces in terms of ensuring that the energy transition does not impact negatively on our economy and that the interests of all relevant stakeholders are taken into account? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Gancho. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Gancho, thank you very much for that question, because what you are raising is precisely what the Presidential Climate Change Commission is working on. And it is doing it in quite an admirable way in that it is consulting with various stakeholders throughout our country, but they've also focused on areas that have many of our coal mines and power stations. And we have insisted that they must consult in a broad and thorough manner. They've got labor involved, they've got community-based organizations, and many other organizations that deal with the lives of our people, including business. And in doing so, we are guided by one principle, that as we transit from fossil fuels to cleaner energy and move towards our national determined contribution by 2030, as we have said, we leave no one behind. But we've also made it clear that, for instance, and I've made it very clear to even global leaders, I've said we've just built 2 mega power stations and spent a great deal of money in building those. They are the newest fleet that one could say there is in the world. And we are not going to be just shutting down Kusile and Medupi. We are going to proceed towards clean energy whilst taking into account, as I said earlier, our own circumstances. And those circumstances have to deal with how do we transit? Are we going to leave certain people behind? Are we going to leave a landscape that's filled with workers who have lost their jobs, either in coal mines or power stations, or are we going to have a just transition? And we've argued that we are committed to a just transition, and a just transition should mean that everyone is involved right across the board. But the other important thing that we need to look at is how, through this process, we can create new industries. We can create hydrogen jobs. We can create clean energy aligned jobs. And those are areas that we want to exploit so that we leave no one behind. Other countries have done so. when the Prime Minister of Spain was here, he explained fully to me the process that they went through, how they were able to migrate from, yes, closing some of their coal mines, but at the same time creating jobs in the same areas and also creating more jobs. And that is what we aspire to do. And that is the journey that we want to take. And the slogan, "Leave no one behind," is very important to us, and that is the way we are headed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, the $8.5 billion can really get us out of our energy crisis, and it can be a giant leap forward for our country. And the Western Cape is showing very clearly how it can be done. We're moving fast to get people out of the dark. We're building battery storage capacity, enabling the generation of renewable energy, incentivizing rooftop solar and other small-scale generation. So while the DA embraces a clean energy future, the ANC is clinging to the dirty coal of the past. And the reason for this is because, as Minister Godon put it, the cadres have to eat. Mr. President, from your previous response to my question, you showed clearly that you seem to have given up on fighting corruption in your own cabinet. And the ANC resists the transition to clean energy because the ANC feeds off it. And Mr. President, Mr. De Ruyter reported the allegations to the police and the Secret Service a year ago. Nothing has been done.
Question, Honorable Member, please.
Mr. President.
Order, order, order.
Surely as a president, you should be less worried about your stolen neckties and more worried about the ties that your cabinet ministers have to cartels that are stealing from the people of South Africa.
I thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, I didn't decipher a question from what Honorable Steenhuisen was saying. He was making a statement. So I didn't hear a question. Now, clearly, because he is playing to the gallery and making political speech from a matter that we should be dealing with very seriously. Climate change is a reality. What has been put forward by either Mr. De Ruyter or whatever we have said, come forward and table the real evidence. Put it on the table, and from what I also heard from the police and what I heard from the investigation unit as they replied to some of the questions, and they seemed to have said, from what I heard, that they have not been favored with the full information. So if there is full information, incidents, names, occurrences, and all that, that should all be put forward, and once it is put forward, I am absolutely certain that those matters will be investigated. I really could not for the life of me see why they cannot be investigated. So I want to repeat, whatever information there is, participation in all these activities by whoever should be brought forward in the detail that is required. And once it is put forward, it should then be investigated. I heard that when asked questions, he then desisted from even putting forward the sharp end of the information that he seemed to have. And so that information should now be put forward, now that we know that what he has said, and once it is put forward, I'm sure it will be investigated. I have said that we cannot deal with innuendo. We cannot deal with those types of rumors without full evidence and information. Let us be an evidence-based type of institution and deal with it, and thereafter we will then arrive at the truth. So if we want truth, come forward with information, and it will be dealt with on that basis. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honourable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable B.N. Heron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable President, one of the three pillars of the Just Energy Transition Programme is the coal to renewable energy shift, the creating of green jobs and the reskilling of workers in the energy sector. In recent weeks, we've heard comments and conflicting comments from government around the future of coal plants and the extension of their lifespan. So while you indicated in response to the first question that the ministers in the energy space are working in a cooperative spirit, it doesn't appear that there's a lot of coherence around the implementation of the JET-P. Mr. President, what would be the consequences if we fail to fulfill our obligations in terms of the JET-P agreement? Thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable the President.
Honourable Speaker, the JET-P initiative is the first of its type in the world. As we speak now, a number of other countries and developing economy countries like us are negotiating their own. So we were the first of the blocks, largely because we realized the seriousness that we needed to have in addressing climate change, crafted a clear plan which was presented to our partners, and they found it quite attractive and decided that they are going to support South Africa in transiting to a clean energy dispensation. And this we found very favorable, and they were able to put resources on the table. We insisted that we should have grants, and largely because much of the damage to the climate is not solely the responsibility of South Africa. Much of it was done by northern country economies. So that is where the grant portion comes in, the concessional loans, which would come at really beneficial interest rates, and thereafter the loans themselves. So that we were able to arrive at a deal, as it were, with all these. It's a great boon to South Africa because it brings enormous resources. It's not every day that you are able to pick up $8.5 billion. And if you deal with the exchange rate today, it's a great deal of money that would do what? Be invested in our country, some of it being grants, being invested particularly in areas which are going to be greatly affected. But more importantly, to strengthen the transmission, because our transmission requires billions and billions of rands. Now, if we are not able to finally close that deal, it basically means then we lose that investment that could have come our way. And some of it is going to come through private sector companies, some of it through development institutions, finance institutions, working together with our own development finance institutions. So we then lose a resource of funding that could have been made available. And I look more at the grant side as well as the concessional loans, which is cheap money that everybody is looking for in the world. We would lose that. Now, we would really have to do things so badly to lose that. And I do not believe that what you perceive as incoherence in government would lead to that. And in fact, there is no incoherence. There would be emphasis laid on certain aspects. For instance, we've now said the decommissioning process, we should look at the scheduling thereof. It should not be a decommissioning process that is going to be fast-paced. It must take into account our own circumstances. And talking to that may sound like incoherence, but it isn't incoherence, because in the end we are saying, and we've always said, that we will transit from fossil fuel energy to clean energy at our own time, at our own pace. And some people may find that maybe when we say at our own time, we are disturbing the apple cart, but we are not, because in the end, we've got to do with taking into account the needs of our people, the requirements of our energy security, and so therefore, we need to be focusing on all these areas. So there is no incoherence. There's possibly emphasis of one area at a particular time. But you will find that, for instance, the three ministers, four if you like, because we have to include also the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, who also plays a role in this whole architecture. All of them articulate the same message, and it is a government message. It is inspired by the processes that we've been through. It is also led by the commission that I set up, the Presidential Climate Commission. So we are singing to the same hymn book, and there is no incoherence. And going forward, we will be hearing the harmony of the music that we will be playing, instrument after instrument. And if you listen carefully, there will be bass, there will be a bugle, there will be a piano, and there will be a trumpet as well. So that will be wonderful music as we transit to renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable the President. Question number 10 has been asked by the Honorable S. Luzipo. Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, investment in geology is important for supporting development. The applications of geology span from minerals exploration, energy security, groundwater security, early warning mechanisms for natural disasters, infrastructure development, and optimal land use. We have accordingly invested a great deal of money, an additional amount of 335 million in recent years towards an integrated multidisciplinary mapping strategy through the Council for Geoscience. An additional 813 million has been allocated towards furthering this development in the current medium-term cycle. The information collected from this exercise is yielding desirable outcomes. For example, a massive rock type in the Northern Cape known as pebmagnetite has been characterized. There is increasing demand for the minerals found in this rock type to fulfill the just energy transition commitments towards the green economy in our country. This mapping work is done in line with the exploration strategy that was approved by Cabinet last year. Yet, as we announced through the Minister of Finance in the 2020 budget speech, the National Treasury was exploring plans to establish a sovereign wealth fund. It was envisaged that this wealth fund would provide an important tool for saving and investing in future generations, as well as to have the potential to strengthen our country's fiscal framework. The National Treasury intended to explore a variety of possible funding sources, such as the proceeds of spectrum allocation, petroleum, gas, and minerals, the sale of non-core state assets, future fiscal surpluses and savings. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 shortly after the 2020 budget meant that government had to reassess its priorities. Due to the impact of the pandemic on the economy and the need for government to provide enormous relief measures, the country has been running substantial fiscal deficits. Since the 2023 budget statement, the economy has had an uncertain outlook. Any decision to move forward with a sovereign wealth fund needs to take into account the current economic and fiscal situation. The establishment of a sovereign wealth fund should be considered when fiscally affordable. And this is what many other countries have done in the past. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honourable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable S. Luzipo.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Honourable President, with the most informed answer. The Council for Geoscience has not only established a footprint in the African continent, but also at a global level as far as mineral exploitation is concerned. In August, South Africa will be hosting the BRICS Summit. Does the President envisage utilizing this platform, amongst others, to ensure that CGS enjoys competitive advantage as far as mineral exploitation and mineral exploration is concerned within the BRICS countries? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Luzipo. The Honourable the President.
Honourable Speaker, yes, Honourable Luzipo, we will want to use every platform we possibly can to showcase the capability of our geosciences unit and also the endowment that we have as a country. And we do so on an annual basis at the mining Indaba, at which our Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy participates actively, bringing together many African countries who've been participating. This year we had some 9,000 delegates, more than at any other time. And at that moment we are then able to showcase what South Africa has to offer. And when we hold the BRICS Summit, we expect that one of the endowments that our country will showcase is our mineral resources, or rather the mineral endowments that we have. But more importantly, because coming together of a BRICS Summit will also bring a number of African countries through the outreach program we've got as BRICS, and many of those will also want to showcase what they have to offer as African countries, and many of them have their mineral wealth, mineral endowments to offer. And this gives us great opportunities for cooperation and working together with them. So this is an area that we will want to exploit, but we want to exploit it much more meaningfully and go beyond just extracting rock and dust and move towards how best we can beneficiate those minerals and also lead us in the path of industrialization, where we can manufacture products that will come from the minerals that we extract from the African soil. So great opportunities will open for us, and they do not only start through geosciences, they extend towards industrialization as well. So thank you very much for raising that, because it gives us a clear window of the opportunities that lie ahead. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. I thank you, Honourable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, you can survey, discover, well, we make our own arrangements. In our
Order.
party, not you make yours. You can survey, you can discover and beneficiate all the minerals on Earth. But if we don't have the electricity, there really is no point. And in this single question on the order paper today, we can define the problem. On the one hand, the ANC complains about the ailing mining sector, and in the same question, it speaks of expropriation. It's the same backward thinking of state control that has destroyed state-owned entities, and it has led to load shedding and why we have an energy crisis. And it's exactly this backward thinking that has collapsed the mining sector and destroyed mining jobs in this country. And it's why we have gone from hero to zero in mining, left behind by Zambia and other countries. Mr. President, do you support expropriation of mines? It's a simple yes or no question. It's not a flip-flop like the ICC. Do you, yes or no, support the expropriation of mines in South Africa?
I thank you, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. The Honorable, order please. It's after lunch, by the way. I know exactly what has happened here. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I just don't know where this question has come from. Because, I'm asking you, because we're talking now about exploration. That is what we're talking about. Be that as it may, be that as it may.
Honorable members, please. Honorable members, proceed, Honorable President.
Be that as it may, we have no policy to expropriate mines. We don't. We see mines as being a very keen contributor to the economic growth of our country, and for that reason, we have sought to pass legislation, which this Parliament has passed, to make sure that there is transformation, there is empowerment of the previously disadvantaged, and that is why the legislation that we have passed to enable black people, our communities, to become equity holders in mining activity is still a very relevant piece of legislation. So in that regard, we see integrated growth. And I would have wanted you to speak more about how best all South Africans, Honorable Steenhuisen, can participate together in building the wealth of our country, and how those who were previously excluded from economic activity can participate. I am yet to hear you come out very clearly on an issue like that. And in the end, your inability to articulate that, even in this Parliament, speaks volumes of exactly where you stand. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honourable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable S.S. Zondo.
Honourable President, considering the lowering carbon emission is at the heart of the global climate change narrative, and that a green economy will mean so much more for people of South Africa, especially poor people who would depend on national resources in rural areas. A green economy is an inclusive economy with decent jobs underpinned by sustainable efficiency, clean and profitable infrastructure solution for generations to come. Mr. President, given the government's current shortcoming in ensuring efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery, how are you going to ensure that the transition to a green economy meets its desired objectives? Thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Zondo. The Honourable the President.
Honourable Speaker and Honourable Zondo, the transition to a clean energy economy which, by the way, will not only revolve around hydrogen, and of course you say green, because it encompasses a whole range of subsets, is going to be driven by the people of South Africa in all their facets. And that is why, through the Presidential Climate Change Commission, we are interfacing and interacting with various entities in our communities, in business, and in labor, and united in our quest to ensure that our advance to clean energy is a movement or a process that is going to be inclusive, and that is going to generate economic growth, and that is going to provide all the various services to our people that you alluded to. So we see this process as not only involving government. Government will want to act with all key role players. And we hold a firm belief that when we work together with various role players, there's great success in store for us. And as we move into new sectors of the economy, there'll even be greater success because everyone is well incentivized. We do believe that the new economies, the new sectors of the economy will open space for everyone, unlike what we have had in the past, where certain people were given space and capability to operate, and these new sectors, we will be able to open up enough opportunities for all our people to be able to play their key role in the economy of our country. So we want our transgression forward to make a clean break with our past and open up new vistas, new avenues for South Africans to participate together in a growing economy. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable MGE Hendricks. Honorable, all right. Honorable Hendricks Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Al-Jamaa supports the boosting the sovereign fund as suggested by Honorable Luzipo in his question. As a member and leader and one of the leaders of the African Parliamentary Network on Illicit Financial Flows and Taxation, this bloc's 5-year research has found that 50% of South Africa's gross domestic product leaves the country through illicit financial flows. Will the President, the Honourable President, His Excellency, put plans in place to stop these illicit financial flows and boost the sovereign fund with this windfall to finance the noble objectives Honourable Luzipo has raised in his question to you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Hendricks. You should know that we have laws and keep developing and sharpening those laws that should prevent illicit financial flows out of our country. But more importantly, the more forward-looking part of this whole question is about setting up a sovereign wealth fund, which the Minister of Finance has addressed, a matter that we all in this government are committed to. We would like to see the creation of a sovereign wealth fund, and we keep looking at various initiatives through which we can have a fund like this created. Successful nations have been able to set up sovereign wealth funds, and some of them have done so through windfalls that they have had either from their natural resources or windfalls from some other economic activity. And we haven't had such, but some have set up those wealth funds by promoting savings amongst their people, and there are a number of ways through which these can be set up, and we remain committed to set up a sovereign wealth fund, and will continue finding ways through which we can do so. We will want to do so to secure future generations' futures, particularly at an economic level. And I speak in great admiration of countries that I have seen having created sovereign wealth funds, and how through their various economic acting entities, be they state-owned enterprises or through other forms of gathering wealth, they've been able to massify their wealth and in the end be able to do a number of great impressive things moving forward. So it is a direction that we are committed in taking. We look forward to the creation of a mega sovereign wealth fund in the future. Thank you very much.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. Question number 11 has been asked by the Honorable B.N. Heron. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, the government takes the allegations made in the Al Jazeera documentary titled Gold Mafia very seriously. We are committed to preserving the integrity of our financial system in the interest of the broader economy and ordinary citizens. Investigative and regulatory authorities will act in accordance with their mandate, including in coordination with other jurisdictions where necessary to take actions against those involved and found guilty in wrongdoing. With respect to actions currently being taken to investigate individuals who are alleged in the documentary to be criminally implicated, an inquiry has been registered by the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation to investigate these syndicates and individuals. This investigation is at an inquiry stage, and no arrests, as far as I'm aware of, have been made as yet. Details of the steps that are being taken cannot be divulged at this stage without compromising the investigation. At the same time, government is working with the Financial Action Task Force to implement an action plan to strengthen the country's efforts to counter money laundering and financing of terrorism. The South African Police Detective Service is currently investigating several serious criminal cases that include these offenses. The investigation of proceeds generated by serious crimes like fraud, corruption, tax evasion, customs and excise, as well as narcotics-related offenses, are also investigated across the police service. Government will continue to combat corruption and money laundering in South Africa. It will also do so both through strengthening its capacity or capability to investigate, to prosecute, and to prevent these financial activities, and thoroughly investigate various allegations, particularly those contained in the Al Jazeera documentary. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable B.N. Heron.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the recent 2023 South African Investor Conference, you addressed an audience of global representatives. I wasn't present during this conference, but I understand that South Africa's recent grey listing was a matter that you addressed extensively with the audience, assuring them that the idea of South Africa being a hub for fraud, corruption and money laundering was not a true reflection of our country, and that we were working methodically and urgently to address and resolve our grey listing. And then we have this extraordinary story told by Al Jazeera and uncovered by the investigative unit, which basically concludes that none of the activities that were reported on would have been possible without the involvement of the banking systems of South Africa and Zimbabwe. The story tells us how smugglers pay off South African bank officials to launder unaccounted for cash. And that in South Africa, the story concludes that a cigarette mogul and his money laundering partner were able to bribe officials at ABSA, Standard Bank and Sasfin Bank to help them park dirty money and then move it from South Africa to a host of front companies across the world. Mr. President, as we address the 8 issues that we must resolve in order to exit grey listing, how will addressing these issues shut down these kinds of criminal activities and really enable us to restore our reputation as a country that is not a hub for these kinds of activities? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I guess the progress that we have made is often not really looked at, because we had many issues that we had to address with regard to this whole process, and we now only left with 8. And those 8, in my view, are within reach. They should be matters that we can resolve fairly quickly. Of course, these matters take time to have a resolution. I'm confident that working through the various institutions that we have, and particularly the very cooperative way in which our institutions now work through the Fusion Center, we should be able to address these. The commitment is there right across our criminal justice fighting institutions to address these, and I'm confident that when we have addressed these, we should be able to avoid the types of mishaps that even the banking sector got involved in, as reported through Al Jazeera. And the fact that those investigations are underway should actually hearten us, because in the end, the rule of law must take its own course and it must apply. So we are in the process of, if you like, living up to what FATF would like us to live up to, and soon get out of the grey listing so that we can return, our status can return to that of old, and I have no doubt that we will get there. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honourable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable B.P. Mabe.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Mr. President, the documentary exposed that illegal mining is not only happening in South Africa, and therefore it's not only a South African problem, but a continental problem which robs countries of their deserved income and opportunities for growth. What measures is government taking to ensure that there is a regional through SADC and continental through AU collaboration to deal with this problem and find a lasting solution? Thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Mabe. The Honourable the President.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Mabe, yes, illegal mining activities are not only South African activity, they run right across the continent. In fact, many countries on our continent are experiencing illegal mining, and in other places they have found a way of managing it a lot better. They call it artisanal mining, which allows a number of people in various communities, yes, to participate in this industry in an organized manner. And unfortunately, in our own country, it has descended to the levels where it has. And at the SADC level, it's being addressed, and at the continental level as well. And discussions are continuing to take place, and our Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy is involved with his counterparts on the continent in dealing with this matter. It is right across the continent. And of course, the problem is where it takes place through illegal activities. It robs the fiscus and the country of the revenue that should accrue to the people of any country, and in our case, to the people of South Africa. So this is a broad matter, and it involves and should include a lot of cooperation amongst a number of key role players in country and across a number of countries and across the continent as well. So efforts are indeed underway to have it addressed in as proper a manner as it is possible. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honourable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Why don't they like you?
Order. Order.
Mr. President, it's not only gold and cigarettes that are being smuggled. A little while ago, the United States government announced that weapons, ammunition, and materials of war were loaded onto the sanctioned Russian ship, the Lady R, when she docked at your government's naval base in Simonstown last December. This suggests that the ANC government is actively arming Russian soldiers and
Order, honourable members,
who are
please.
murdering and maiming innocent people, not only in Ukraine, but also across the African continent. It's been half a year now since the scandal of the Lady R docking in Simonstown broke, and I find it inconceivable that a president worth his salt would not have been briefed on the situation by now. Mr. President, can you confirm whether weapons of war were loaded on board that Russian ship before she left Simonstown? Thank you.
Thank you, the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The matter, and let me say,
Honourable Mr. President,
yes,
I'm really sorry. You have a choice whether to respond to this question or not. Honourable members, order, because this is a new question. It is. Honourable members, all that I am saying is this is a new question. So if the President wishes to respond to the question, he will. If he doesn't, no, come on, Honourable. You are a leader of a party. Stop doing that. You are a leader. Honourable Steenhuisen, please, please. You can do better than that, honestly. Honourable President.
Metric.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Whilst Mr. Steenhuisen puffs off his anger and is performing, I wanted to say, Ms. Honourable Steenhuisen, Simonstown, it's not what you call your government's Simonstown. It is South Africa's. It belongs to the people of South Africa. No, I wanted to correct you, and I want you to be patriotic and regard installations as important as those as belonging to the people of South Africa. So I want you not to be derisive, and I don't want you also to be as insulting as you are about things and installations such as those. It belongs to the people of South Africa. Having said that, we are all aware of the news that we all became aware of the Lady R, and that whole matter, Honourable Steenhuisen, It's being looked into. No, it isn't. It's being looked into, and whilst the process continues, I want you to allow that process to continue to reach its fruition. I know that you are so keen. You are so keen and you are so interested in knowing exactly what happened. The matter, yes, the matter is being looked into, and in time we'll be able to speak about it. Yes, in time we'll talk about it. So, Honorable Speaker, as you correctly said, this matter best be left where it is, and then the answer is that the matter is being looked into. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable the President. Order. Honorable members. Order, please. May I have your attention, please? Rule 142(6) states that a supplementary question must arise directly from the original question and the reply given thereto, and may not constitute a new question. And that was the basis on which, Honorable Member, please lower your hand, because I am on the floor right now and I'm addressing you. Now, if that is the basis on which, honorable members, I made the remark which I made, which I believe is correct. Now, you may now raise your point of order, Honorable. Thank you very much, Honorable Steenhuisen. Honorable members, I think it's also going, wait, Lima, Honorable Tlakut. You know what? Here we are political parties with divergent views on every matter for that matter. But what I will not accept is honorable members screaming, and you have a right to heckle, by the way. But what you don't have a right to do is to scream at members. It's insulting at times and can be very demeaning and humiliating. And I'm addressing all of us. Let's not do that. And I was correct to say, Honorable Steenhuisen, I did not expect that from you because you are a leader of the opposition in this House. Please, I am a presiding officer. I am. All I'm saying is order, and that order applies even to the President or even to the leader of the opposition party. Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable E.M. Buthelezi. Oh, Honorable Shengwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Honorable Mr. President, at the heart of this is the collapse of intelligence operations in the country. We have seen this before, and every time a new episode arises, it's the clearest indication that there are problems. We have seen the collapse of intelligence around Phala, the 2021 riots, the Thabo Bester matter, the Bushiri matter, the syndicates operating within Eskom, the cash in transit heists, the cross-border crimes, and the political killings and disgabi. The list is endless. State security resides in the presidency, Mr. President. So this is squarely on your table. So the question then becomes, do you have confidence in the current arrangement, capacity and capability of the intelligence sector and law enforcement agencies to deal with crimes? And if so, on what basis? And if not, what reforms are you prepared to put on the table as a matter of urgency to ensure that we are able to push back on the frontiers of crime? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable Shengwa. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Shengwa, the answer is yes. I do have confidence, and the processes that we are involved in, which emanated from the report of the Mufhamadi high-level panel and other investigations that we have had, are pointing us in the right direction. And we are in the process of rebuilding, reforming, repositioning our intelligence services, and I'm confident that the many lapses that we have had, some of which you have alluded to, are lapses that will not happen in the future. So yes, I have full confidence that we are on the right path of recovery, of rebuilding. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The last question has been asked by the Honorable T.N. Mutle. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, government resolved to ensure the safety and security of South Africans is evident through, amongst other things, the significant increase in resourcing of prosecutors and police as announced in the February budget speech. This budget will assist in the recruitment of some 10,000 new police officers to be deployed countrywide to fight crime and additional prosecutors to tackle complex cases of corruption. To ensure that complex and high-level corruption cases are dealt with swiftly and efficiently, special criminal crimes courts have been established in all provinces and are being capacitated with technological tools to allow for virtual testimony and digital receipt of evidence. A review of the anti-corruption architecture is near complete. The review will make proposals for enhancement of our institutional architecture, which includes the proposals for an effective agency to fight corruption. Recent cases mentioned by the Honourable Member highlight weak border controls in our country, the establishment of the Border Management Agency with border guards who have been given certain peace officer powers will help to address the weaknesses in border controls. Strengthening international cooperation with other countries, including mutual legal assistance and extradition matters, is a priority as we fight against all forms of transnational crimes. The ability of the criminal justice system to respond to criminal activities needs to be complemented by long-term developmental strategies to prevent crimes from happening in the first place and increasing levels of safety in communities. The Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy, which was adopted last year, recognizes that the social and economic contributors to crime must be addressed collaboratively by all stakeholders. It also recognizes that our response needs to be integrated and holistic. The 6 pillars of the strategy as approved by Cabinet and as announced are firstly, an effective criminal justice system. Secondly, support to victims of crime. Thirdly, early social interventions to prevent crime and violence. And fourthly, effective and integrated service delivery. Fifthly, safety through environmental design and planning. And lastly, active public and community participation. Honourable Speaker, in putting this strategy into practice, the security cluster is working to improve the efficiency, the responsiveness, and professionalism of criminal justice sector, while mobilizing communities and establishing strategic partnerships to reduce crime and violence. Honorable Speaker, I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The second supplementary question, no, the first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable T.N. Mutle.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, it is worth noting by this Parliament as well as the public that this Parliament is very peaceful without the EFF. The government's aspiration, Mr. President, about growing the economy is negatively affected by the challenges of crime, corruption, and general safety of our people and property. It is therefore logical that if we want to sustain economic growth, the peace and security cluster should be capacitated to create a stable and peaceful environment for economic growth. In that regard, we note progress in the establishment of the BMA, as you have mentioned, and border guards in addressing the weaknesses in the border control, as well as additional allocation to the cluster as presented in the budget by the Minister of Finance. However, Mr. President, what are the plans of the government to further strengthen the security cluster to create a conducive environment for the economic growth that we are embarking on? Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Mutle. The criminal justice cluster is completely committed to dealing with the situation of crime and corruption in our country. And the integrated crime and violence prevention strategy speaks specifically to the efforts that we as government are making, because in the end, South Africans want to feel safe, they want to live in safe environments, and they want to know that safety is going to underpin their lives as a whole. And it is to this end that we are pouring resources, as well as ensuring that there is full capability by professionalizing, yes, the police service, and ensuring that the criminal justice system is strengthened through the various...
Malebu, please mute your system. Thank you. Proceed, Mr. President. Honorable President, you may proceed.
So, through this integrated strategy, which we adopted last year, we hope and aim to ensure that it will contribute to stabilizing our country from a security point of view, because as you correctly say, if there is anything that troubles the people of South Africa is their safety, and if we want our people to live in safety, it is this that we need to focus attention on. And that is why the very first part of the pillars of this strategy is an effective criminal justice system. But more importantly, to show the care that our government has to victims of crime and criminality, we say that there should be maximum support to the victims. And we should focus more on the prevention of crime and violence. And through the efforts of employing more police officers and also of enhancing the cooperation between the police and the defense force, we are enhancing the stabilization of safety in our communities. And through this, we want to see an integrated service delivery fully, where all these arms that are meant to fight crime are united in their effort and they work together on an ongoing basis. But the more important aspect, Honorable Mutle, is to ensure that there is community involvement. In the end, the best defense for our people is to have communities working together and cooperating with the police to ensure that we rid our communities and our areas of crime, which makes for an unsafe environment where our people live. We do believe that implementing this strategy will go a long way towards reducing the levels of crime in our country, and it is to this end that we have taken the steps that we have taken, including laying out resources to make sure that indeed we make South Africans feel safe. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, the Honorable the President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. President, let me assure you I am patriotic. And I still cling to the Mandela legacy of approach to conflict internationally. And that is why I will not stand by for not a moment while you and your government drag us into the gutter of the world along with despots and dictators who prey on innocent civilians and who are guilty of war crimes. Mr. President, I cannot believe the answer to your previous question on this matter. The eyes of the world are upon South Africa. We are facing a GOA not being renewed and now face the risk of sanctions because this government will not come clean on this matter. How do we sleep at night? How do you sleep at night when South African arms and ammunition loaded at the Lady R at Simonstown Naval Base could have been used to slaughter innocent civilians in the Ukraine and in other parts of Africa? Our question is simply this: how do you face the world and how do you sleep at night? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, earlier you invoked a provision that says an unrelated questions to the questions that are asked are questions that one does not need to answer, and this is one of them. And thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable the President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable L.L. van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable President. Mr. President, I thought this question would somehow have touched on our failure to extradite the Guptas, because I think most of us are still traumatized by the fact that while we were thinking they were in jail, they were actually gallivanting the globe with stolen taxpayer money and SA passports. But that having been said, Mr. President, one matter that will completely erode our standing in the international community and cause a severe security crisis is if our electricity grid collapses and a total blackout occurs, which many energy experts are warning against. Not even Eskom can give us a guarantee that this will not occur. A total grid collapse will lead to a national crisis that we've never seen before and could threaten many lives, and with a heightened risk of social unrest, looting and vandalism. Mr. President, you've sought to assure us today that our electricity woes will be something of the past soon. But can you tell me whether your government has got a safety and security plan in place for the eventuality of a grid collapse and what that plan will be? I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable van der Merwe. The Honorable the President.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable van der Merwe. Through the National Security Council, this government looks at a number of security threats that face our country, and indeed, the electricity one is one of those, and we continue to look at various options and scenarios, and when obviously those events eventuate and are near to eventuating, indeed, the people of South Africa will be the first to know because on an ongoing basis, we do proper assessments. The security assessment of our country is one of the top items on my daily agenda, as I'm briefed also by the Minister of State Security, as well as our various other operatives or officials in that sector. So indeed, it is one of those matters that we look at, but the efforts that we are putting in place with regard to energy security are the type of efforts which I do believe will continue and will go forward to bear fruit, to prevent that eventuality that you're talking about. But nonetheless, we do look at a number of scenarios, and the scenario that you paint is one of those that we look at. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Member.
I thank you, the President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable F.J. Mulder. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Through you to the Honorable President.
Oh.
With reference to the mentioned Bushiri, Bester and unrest matters before the House today, would the Honorable President agree that the mere fact that South Africa has some 300,000 registered private security officers and 4,500 registered security businesses with a combined turnover exceeding 111 billion rand per year is a clear indication that South African citizens have lost faith in the government and its ability to fulfill its constitutional mandate, which guarantees the safety of South African citizens, leaving South Africans with no option other than to bring about these security and intelligence services with after-tax money, as is the case with other disciplines, thus resulting in double taxation. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker and Honorable Member, my information is many countries have private security firms, and that does not mean that they are resident countries or governments have lost, or people rather have lost complete faith in their own governments. Some of the security companies that operate here emanate from your more developed economy countries, and they are strong and powerful in those countries, having cut their teeth on security matters in their home countries. So their presence there in those countries, and they proliferate in various countries around the world, by no means does it mean that those citizens have lost confidence in their own governments. We must accept that private security is a modern feature of modern society, and it really depends on the preferences of either individuals, households, including companies. And where people live, for instance, where people live in private or enclosed estates, it's not the police who guard them, it is private security. And in a number of places where companies have their installations, it's private security that looks after them. So it depends on the choices that they make. And in the end, we are finding that cooperation between private security firms and the police is something that we found very helpful. And our cooperation, and you can speak to the police, they will tell you that it increases and enhances the eyes and the ears of the South African police, and they work in great cooperation together. So that in many ways should enhance the safety of our people. And of course, acts of criminality and many others are caused by a whole range of factors, including state of unemployment and poverty and so forth. So we've got to have a multidisciplinary process of enhancing the security of our people, and if utilizing, for those who have made the choice, private security, that should be something that we say is their choice. But we, as government, through the regulator that we have for private security, by the way, are finding it very helpful to work and cooperate with private security. So we don't see private security as an enemy. We see private security as an added force that enhances the safety of our people. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
I thank the President. Honorable members, that concludes questions to the President. I thank the President. Order. Order. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the mace to leave the chamber. And that concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.